So you've saved up a couple $100 and you want to take a trip. You could choose New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, but what about Korea? That's right, for the same cost as a domestic flight, you can get to the other side of the world. Low-cost airlines like Spirit and Ryanair have built a name for cheap, no-frills service. There's been a rise, however, of long-haul low-cost carriers. A couple years ago, we covered Zip Air on a flight from Japan to San Jose. Then there's airlines like Norse or Scoot. Today, we're in Korea, however, to try their rendition of this idea. Air Premia identifies themselves as Korea's first hybrid service carrier, essentially meaning they work on the business model of a low-cost carrier, but with a few perks of the full-fare carriers. And today we'll fly on their route from Seoul Incheon to San Francisco in economy class to see what the value of this $250 ticket is, the cheapest transoceanic ticket I've ever bought. We'll also discuss who Air Premia is and just how this business model works, so use the timestamps below to find what you came here for. Welcome to Seoul Incheon Airport, where Terminal 1 hosts the majority of carriers. I think of it as Terminal 2 being Korean Air and SkyTeam partners, and then everyone else is in Terminal 1. This includes the other alliances and Air Premia. Having opened in 2001, they just began renovations this year, lasting for the next 10 years. But it's still an iconic terminal, especially with their Christmas decorations and lights going up. 'Tis the season. The check-in doesn't open until 3 hours prior to departure, so there was a big queue growing until that time. Once the line opened, the economy line moved slow. My tip? Check in online, as there was an online check-in line that was nearly empty. While in line, we had to answer a whole slew of security questions to get a sticker required to board, similar to boarding a flight in Tel Aviv. We then got our boarding pass and bag tag. You're only allowed 10 kilos of luggage, which includes your personal item, so unless you're carrying on helium, expect to check a bag. They also give you the option to upgrade at check-in to premium economy for about $380 as there's no business class, so that kinda takes the place. Unfortunately, for the US flights, the self-serve kiosks weren't working. Then, off to security, where there's a few corrals. Scan your boarding pass, go through the TSA type security, ending with an automated departure immigration and off into the terminal, all lasting no more than about 10 minutes. Obviously, as a budget carrier, Air Premia lacks lounge services, but fortunately, Terminal 1 has some amenities to pass the time, with the main hallway and 2 concourses branching off. If you have a flight out of the satellite terminal, or Terminal 2, you can take the train out there. If you're looking for a place to rest, there's all sorts of areas to rest. I've found that there's always more than a few quiet corners of Terminal 1, regardless of time of day, but they do also have a nap zone with lounge chairs for free, or there's a transit hotel which can be booked for longer layovers. This area also has showers if that's all you need, but don't want a whole room. There's also no shortage of restaurants, with some of the best being up in the multicultural food court. But if you're looking for something chill, check out the Book Cafe. There's a Starbucks upstairs and a library-type seating, but also with views of the ramp and runways. If you want to learn about Korean culture, they have a couple options. The K-Culture Zone upstairs, and the Korean Traditional Cultural Center on the main concourse, plus performances from local culture. There's also like 5 spaces scattered throughout the terminal for younger kids to get energy out before the flight, plus they've got an arcade for all ages. If you're a fan of art, there's also the assortment of sculptures or design elements if you want to take a stroll around the terminal, like the giant spiders. If you have a long enough layover, you can also take advantage of the free city tours at the kiosks in the concourse. Also, you've heard of a smoking lounge, but what about a vaping lounge? And if you're looking to shop, check out their stores, which seem to come in pairs. If you want to buy cosmetics and perfume, packaged food and souvenirs, liquor and tobacco, books and drinks, gifts and toys, or kids and food. If all else fails, you can just take a stroll around the terminal, which sports a classic architectural look. Each wing looks fairly similar, but the spokes do vary a bit from the main stretch, labeled as Air Star Avenue. Not only is there a classic look, but there's always a few empty gates you can relax in peace, or just watch the aircraft outside. Asiana is obviously the biggest Terminal 1 carrier, at least for now, but it also has essentially all non-SkyTeam carriers, so there's airlines from nearly every continent and aircraft of all sizes, which, dang, these A380s are huge. After I killed my time around the terminal, I made my way to my gate. Going downstairs typically means you're getting a bus gate, which had me nervous, but apparently that's not how these gates at Incheon work. Down at the gate, they were checking that we all had the passport sticker. Eventually, they had us queue for boarding, premium economy lining up in front, and economy lining up along the window. I have a hunch there were some stragglers in that premium economy line since it seemed much longer than it should have been. But eventually, we climbed on board this 4-year-old 787-9. Air Premia has 2 cabin classes. Premia class, which is their premium economy with 42 inches of pitch, and economy, which has 35 inches of pitch. 35 inches puts them at the world's 3rd best economy legroom, only behind Contour and Hi Air Korea, beating Japan Airlines and All Nippon by an inch. I'd imagine that the lack of a true business class allows them to integrate slightly more space into economy. These airlines charge for seat reservations, but the further back you go, the cheaper it gets. So while the front of the cabin remained super empty until later in the boarding process, the back of the cabin was much more full. Welcome to the back of the plane, row 33. I moved to this row at check-in since it was open, and fortunately it remained open, and appeared to be the only fully open row. Nothing quite like hearing the boarding complete cabin call while the seat next to you is still empty. These seats are fairly basic economy seats, although I do appreciate the height of the seats as it offers some extra privacy. There's a 4-way headrest, up, down, and curling for head support. I actually found the seat material to be super comfortable. More than some business class seats, honestly. There's armrests on both sides, which include the reclined feature. There's power outlets below the seats, 2 for every 3 seats, and then the seat backs. The TV is a good size and has an anti-glare finish, including the headphone plugs and a USB outlet. There's a hard-shell literature pocket and then a tray table that folds halfway or all the way out. Then is a soft-shell literature pocket which is empty and therefore totally free for your use. There is space under the seats for your bags, but if you're in the aisle seat, the seat support restricts the space available. Otherwise, backpacks fit, and with the empty seats, I have plenty of space to spread out. I honestly found the legroom to be modest, a good hand length between my knees and the seat back, and if you put your bags in the overhead bins, you get even more space. I did appreciate the 2 windows, but was bummed not to see any air vents. Now it may be economy, but there's still some amenities. We got these blankets that are a bit too thin, so I was glad to use all 3 for my row, but no pillows of any sort. We also got headphones that were actually fairly good quality, considering most economy headphones gargle the sound so much. But that's it. So if you want more, prepare to bring it with you. But at least it's so cheap. At this price, I'm honestly just happy to have anything. We also boarded so fast that we had to wait around for like 15 minutes just to push back. 7 years ago, the former president of Jeju Air, Kim Jong-chul, founded Air Premia with the goal of flying in 2020. They planned to launch with 3 leased 787s, but later opted to buy 5 of their own. And while the original plan was to launch regional in Asia, they shifted their focus to long haul, announcing that they wanted to launch with Los Angeles and San Jose, 2 cities with the most Koreans abroad. They got their air carrier certificate in 2019, and COVID pushed back their inaugural, but in 2021 they received their first airplane flying from Seoul to Jeju. The airline was strictly domestic for 2 months to iron out the initial operating pitfalls, but have since suspended domestic operations with no plans to return them, it seems. That same year, they applied for the U.S. Foreign Carrier Certificate, hoping to reach Los Angeles in mid-2022. Los Angeles sees 2 daily flights from Asiana and Korean Air. Each uses an A380 for one of those flights. But once those carriers merge, only SkyTeam carriers will serve this route, and Air Premia is hoping to cash in on that. After launching the Los Angeles route, they announced that Newark would be the second destination, being the first time Newark saw Korean flights in over 30 years. Frankfurt was then announced as their first European destination, and then Dhaka, Bangladesh was their first international Asian city. They then ended that big year by launching Honolulu on New Year's Eve. Finally, this flight, earlier this year, San Francisco was chosen as their 4th U.S. destination. They also launched interline partnerships with Alaska and Korean Air, allowing for connections on both ends of the journey, and also agreed to lease 4 more 787s from Korean Air to supplement the 5 they currently have to allow for further growth. Most airlines need a packed premium cabin to turn a profit, so carriers like this really bank on high load factors. Typically, business travelers can fill the business class cabins, which is why leisure routes are more thin in business. Business travelers also tend to stick with their frequent carriers that have a true business class or status, while vacationers will take the cheapest fare regardless of carrier. This is why airlines like Air Premia focus less on the business routes and more so on markets with large Korean diasporas or tourism. So with that in mind, what comes next once they get these additional 787s from Korean Air? Well, within Asia, if they want to target Korean vacation spots, they'll look at Vietnam, Singapore, Manila, and Osaka. Looking abroad, North America and Europe seem to be of high importance to their growth. Seattle and Denver are the largest Korean diasporas still lacking service, so they remain possibilities, but also they have indicated interest in Vancouver, Munich, Cairns, Rome, and Paris. But with LA's load factor at 85% and Newark at 90% right after launch, it's clear that they know what they're doing with route selection, so I'm curious what's next. We were given dinner service about 90 minutes after departure to leave us as much sleep as we can for the 9-hour flight. I chose the bibimbap, the Korean specialty, which came with the assorted veggies, gochujang sauce, sesame oil, and then some potato salad on the side with a Madeleine cookie for dessert. Honestly, one of the most well-rounded economy meals I've ever gotten. We also got water and a choice of soft drink. Not only am I impressed with the quality, but especially at this price point. The entertainment on board is a bit interesting. They do have those seatback TVs, but the first thing that struck me was that there was no real homepage. Just the menu to the left with movies, shows, shopping, internet, my flight, and information. While strange, I really just cared about the content, although it became clear rather quickly that these titles were all in Korean. I came in here with so much hope, but was quickly proven that I'd have to use my own content. I did appreciate the flight info, where you can find airport information, flight information, and the in-flight maps, with the best part being the maps, which were full of information and all sorts of views from the journey. There is also internet available, and there's a seatback card to help with the connection. It did offer a bit more entertainment, such as live TV, although none of the channels were working. But as for Wi-Fi, you could get an hour of messaging for free, but everything else cost money, with the full flight being $30. Once connecting, it was real slow, but enough for emails and Instagram at least. Typically, we check out the beds of business class seats, but it's different back here. The main story is the recline and how much it helps. Similar to Swiss and Virgin Atlantic, when you recline the seat back, the seat base slides forward, allowing for slightly better angle. Other than that, however, the recline wasn't too large. You can use the headrest to support your head or the window if you've got the window seat, as there's some good space there. The blanket isn't quite big enough for your whole body, so dress warm enough, but there's also a footrest, which makes all the difference in my opinion. All in all, it's one of the most comfortable economy seats I've slept in, but I benefit from having my whole row. Using 2 blankets as blankets and 1 as a pillow, I was able to lay across the seats as a full-on bed, and honestly, I slept like a rock. If I were Air Premia, I'd add the option to buy the whole row of seats, kind of like Air New Zealand's Sky Couch that we covered last year. Honestly, it would still be one of the best ways to get home from Asia, even for a little bit more money. I do give Air Premia props for not locking the window shades like most carriers, allowing each passenger at a window to decide if their window's dim or bright. That did mean, however, that when the passenger across the aircraft from me rose his window shade to allow in some of that morning light, that's what finally woke me up, as we were about 3 hours from home and just south of Alaska, and I decided to go exploring to see if there was any sort of mid-flight snacks. What I found is that they don't have anything available here on Air Premia, especially in that back galley, even though there's a ton of space. So if you get snacky on long flights, it's best to bring some of your own food. The economy lavatories aren't too big, but I do like that fake wood floor design that they do have. There isn't any amenities, which is pretty normal for economy class cabins, but I really liked the air freshener scent that they used, which was basically like a tea scent. A little over 2 hours from San Francisco, we received our final meal service of the flight. I was given the choice between vegetarian or chicken, given to me on a similar tray from the dinner service. I chose to go with the chicken option, which came with the main course, which was chicken and potatoes with some vegetables. On the side was a pasta salad, cold but tasty, and a fruit cup with some really good melon. Once again, we were given water and a drink choice, and unfortunately there wasn't any coffee, but I was able to get some tea. So there's low-cost carriers and full-fare carriers, but Air Premia plays in the middle ground, a relatively new concept known as a hybrid service carrier, and Air Premia is the first one in Korea. Low-cost carriers have existed since PSA in the 60s, meant to undercut full-fare carriers, forcing them to trim their services to compete, and hybrid carriers split that gap, with the goal of using a low-cost business model, but including a few key features of full-fare carriers, especially with premium passengers. Honestly, more carriers could be considered hybrid, but choose to identify as low-cost or full-fare. JetBlue, for example, kinda started the trend when they added entertainment, and especially the business class cabins they have now. Simple Flying lists 8 factors that separate low-cost and full-fare. Fleet, with full-fare having mixed fleets, and low-cost being more homogeneous. Airports, with primary airports, first reliever, or secondary airports. Cabins, seeing multiple cabin classes versus a single high-density setup. Network, with hub and spoke versus point-to-point. Coverage, medium to long haul versus short to medium haul. Frequent flyer programs and alliances, being almost only with full-fare airlines. And fares, with a wide range including different cabins versus a single low-cost fare. And Air Premia has exactly 4 of each, so they're right in that hybrid sweet spot. Air Premia dances the line in a couple ways. For starters, they have 2 cabin classes, not quite business, but economy and premium economy. This heightens the capacity while also saving operating costs, as they don't need to spend all the money on the business class passengers. This varies from low-cost carriers like Zip Air, who offer nothing: no free seats, no free bags, no free food, and no entertainment. Meanwhile, Air Premia offers free food, bags, and entertainment, just not seats, and with a buy-on-board program for duty-free and Wi-Fi. They hope to undercut Asiana and Korean Air's fares by 10 to 20%. The alliance is the last big thing that puts them in the low-cost bucket. That being said, Air Premia does seem to be shifting towards the full-fare route. Asiana Airlines is about to merge with Korean Air, leaving a large void in Korea, as they currently have 25 million seats annually out of Seoul, nearly 80% of the Star Alliance seats. Air Premia and Tway, another Korean budget carrier, are competing to take Asiana's spot once they're gone. The biggest prize of it all is being able to join Star Alliance. At the moment, neither carrier meets the requirements to join, but once they're in a race to meet those standards, we'll see what happens. This includes safety, operations, fleet, and network standards, plus a full IATA membership and frequent flyer program. Tway has a true business class in their 3 A330s, and they have a bigger network, although it's mostly regional, while Air Premia is flying to the US and Europe, and these alliances are somewhat location biased. So far, TWA's been looking at Asiana's European markets, and Air Premia with North America to grow the network standards. Also, Air Premia has the frequent flyer program but lacks the IATA membership, while TWA has IATA but no frequent flyer. Air Premia has revamped their Wi-Fi, upgraded their amenities, and joined the US's TSA pre-check program. Once Asiana goes away, I foresee a wild battle ensuing. The hybrid model's definitely the best for passengers, as they get more bang for their buck, I feel, but the airlines would prefer it to be low cost to trim more stuff, at least with current examples. This makes me wonder if Air Premia will shift to full fare or low cost once they have the customer base, or even to achieve the goal of filling that Asiana void. A couple years ago, we flew Zip Air, the Japanese low-cost, long-haul carrier in economy, from Tokyo to San Jose, an airport that I wish Air Premia would look into as an alternative to San Francisco, who in peak season has 7 daily flights to Seoul, while San Jose has none. It'll probably save Air Premia some cost on the fees, and for us passengers, I think it's a better experience than these giant airports, especially for point-to-point travel, much less stressful. Now for Zip Air, I mentioned that the seats were alright, the entertainment wasn't bad, and the food was incredible. The value, however, was the best part. I mean, I spent a couple $100s on that flight, and while it's great to have a lie-flat seat, that's not always the reality. I honestly felt like I received a better product than I would have on most full-fare carriers, but for half the cost. So ever since then, I've been itching to try another one of these carriers. When a recent trip to Asia required a cheap flight home, I figured it was my chance to do it again. Air Premia has basically no ground product, so it's all up to how well you can entertain yourself at the Incheon airport. Once on board though, the flight's worth every penny. I mean, the seats are some of the most comfortable out there. There's at least some amenities, and once again I was thoroughly impressed with the meal services. I will say that Zip Air had better food in my opinion, but it also cost money, while Air Premia's was free. Honestly, it feels like Air Premia is shifting more towards the full fare experience, which isn't the end of the world, especially if they can fill the void of Asiana. Honestly, I'd like to see if they can find their way into a partnership or alliance to allow more global reach, but at least I've got them at my home airport for now. I'd also be curious to see if they shift to a more proper business class once they do corner their share of the market. Asiana's departure from existence is preparing a million questions for the Korean aviation market. The main question is Air Premia or TWA going to be better suited to answer those questions? One thing's for sure though, this flight is an incredible way to get to and from Asia, from LA, the Bay, or New York. It's got that great Asian hospitality, but at half the cost of what you'll find otherwise. What do you think though? Let me know in the comments, and until next Sunday, safe travels. I'll see y'all next time.